Welcome to Tech World's Fast Five discussions, and thank you for joining us for today's show. We hear about the convergence of content all the time, but what does it really mean? Are there any real world or benefits, or is this all about software companies trying to sell more products and thought leaders trying to book more conference slots? Joining us today for our discussion is Dr. Erica Conrad. She's a senior lecturer at Northern Arizona University, and Karen Carroll. She is an alumna of NAU, a current professor of technical writing, as well as a business owner, and Connie Giordano, the co-owner and executive editor of Tech World as well. My name is Al Martin. I will be asking some questions and occasionally adding some thoughts if I have anything to share. So before we meet Dr. Conrad and Karen, it's worth mentioning that Northern Arizona University is a partner of ours, and we highly recommend checking them out if you're interested in advancing your education. They're a great choice. We do have information on Tech World's website. You can read it. If you have any questions, contact us. We'll get you in communications with NAU, but yeah, have a look. They're a lot of good feedback, and they've been a great partner of ours over the years. So, Dr. Conrad, thank you so much for joining us. A year goes by quickly, and I know I mentioned this in our pre-meeting, but actually 2 years has gone by as well. 2 years and a day ago, we were having this first conversation with you and talking about technical communication and all of the various facets. Before we get into it, could you refresh us for NAU?
Yeah, NAU, could you repeat the question? My audio cut out right when you were at the crucial moment of that question.
Uh-oh. I was just asking what's your role at NAU. And
okay,
just talk
role.
About
that was the word I missed. Yeah, I am a senior lecturer, and I teach technical and professional writing. I teach both undergrads and also graduates in our technical writing program. We have a graduate certificate that is 18 units, and that translates to about 6 classes. And then we also have a master's degree, which is double that. So you can finish in no time at all, or you can take a little longer and also do a project that relates to your current work or work you want to do. So that's our capstone project. That's the last thing you do. And we want it to be practical. We want it to be something that affects your future and also is helpful for where you are right now.
Very nice. But from what I hear, and that's from you, you're also a student these days. So what are you studying, and how is it to be in the classroom versus leading it?
Well, I'm a student very informally, Al. I mostly train myself. I don't sit by the fireside reading books by the light of a candle, but I do get online and take as many webinars as I can. I also go to workshops at my local branch of the Society for Technical Communications. And that local branch is about 3 hours from Flagstaff, where I am right now. So I go to as many events as I can. And this past weekend, I went to a workshop on how to use Adobe Spark. So yeah, and I also have interests, like I'm learning a tad bit about API. Now I know what it means. Not that I can really use it, but I know what it means. So it's popping up everywhere now. And I'm also interested in user experience and user experience writing. So I'm learning as much as I can as I go.
Very nice. Very good. All right. So also joining us, Karen, welcome. We have been on calls as well. So what is keeping you busy these days?
Well, hi, Al. Thanks for having me. I apologize that my camera is not working, so I'm going to be faceless during this meeting. What's keeping me busy these days? Well, I am a business owner. I own a one-person company that does freelance technical writing. And then because I completed my master's degree in 2016, I was able to land a position teaching English at the local community college. So that's very exciting. I start my first class next week, the 22nd. And just to keep things interesting, I am also a part-time background investigator, which is a whole other animal in itself, but I find myself using many of my technical communication skills in that work.
You didn't share this in the email background stuff. This is the good stuff. I round the questions on that.
I know, I decided to bomb you.
Hey, that's great. I wish we had more time. We have way more than 5 questions in our Fast 5 and background. Oh, that's good.
Yeah, it's
so
really
cool. Well, thank you so much for joining.
No, happy to be here.
And imagine you can use it on your students, and you can also use those skills for business development. Anyway, very cool.
Oh, yeah, it's very, very interesting work.
All right, Connie, welcome. And what is keeping you busy these days? Just kind of lounging and chilling out.
Oh, if only. Well, my other life's work is keeping me extremely busy these days. So definitely diving deep into the knowledge management world and having a good time, but it definitely takes up a lot of my time. Plus just, keeping up with what's going on Tech World and writing and editing as much as I can and keeping an eye on what's happening out there in terms of who's going to what conferences and that sort of thing. So much the same as it usually is, just a lot more of it because it's the fall.
That's it. That's it. All right, so let's get into the Fast Fives. First, we have 5 big questions. I already let the cat out of the bag. We have something like 8 today, but it still has a nice ring to it. We have these questions, but we also open this up. This is live to the better or worse for us. So if you do have questions and you have your Twitter account open there, use the hashtag TWFast5. 5 is a numeral. And we'll be monitoring Hootsuite. If you send this question out, you have for anybody here on the call or on our broadcast, we'll do a question back to you via email and see if we can answer it. Who knows? If it's a great question, we'll write about it, put it on Tech World. It'll be world famous, read by tens of people, and we'll be able to really add to the knowledge here. So without further ado, Connie, do you want to start off with our first question?
Sure. So we've got this thing that we call content convergence, and it probably means a different thing to whoever happens to be mentioning the topic. So it's been around for a while. I've read a few books on and various, scholarly articles and whatnot. But for the purposes of our discussion, I wanted to start with you, Erica, and ask you how you would define this concept of convergence of content.
Okay, thanks, Connie. I would define the content convergence as the merging or combining or integration of different types of content. So marketing content, technical content, training content, end user support content. Not in that the same document is going to work in all those contexts, but that there are commonalities and perhaps parts of these contents that are shared in each of these, what some people call silos. So the content convergence is perhaps a breaking down of the walls of those silos. Although there's a very nice Bright Talk webinar that Scott Abel did with Alan Porter. I don't know if you've seen that, Connie, but in that webinar, Alan talks about that perhaps it's not so good to destroy the content silos because there's a purpose for those silos, but perhaps the content convergence is building bridges from one silo to another. So I hope that works for you. How would you define it?
It's interesting because I tend to look at this on both the sort of the work process and approach kind of facet, as well as the what kinds of content are converging. And at this stage, I think where the silos are tends to be as much in the process as it is in the actual content, because I don't know about other people, but having been a content writer for umpty gabillion years, more than I'm actually going to admit live here, I tend to write a lot of content for all sorts of different purposes. And generally, when I'm doing that, I'm in a role where it's it's content for those different purposes within the same organization and around the same topic or concept. So I think there's two important streams that we have to understand in terms of the concept, and that is how is the convergence of content impacting workflows in organizations and the tools that are being used and whatnot, versus how are the creators of that content adjusting to writing for those different purposes and reusing parts and sharing parts and that sort of thing.
Yeah, Connie, I really like how you have defined the convergence in two ways. One is the process and one is the product. So I think that's a really nice way of looking at the convergence and thinking about the issues involved and the fun things we can do and the things that can get us in trouble. Yeah, I really like that two-pronged approach.
For me, and this is, I don't have a writing background. I have an analyst background, a better kind of a more broad business. But when I was trained, and as I look at the communication needs of customers, of users of products, questions are being asked of them. And if you go from the idea that I have a problem all the way to I've solved the problem with a particular product, how do I get the most out of it? That they call buyer journey in a lot of situations. Then this convergence, because of the ability to have access on the internet, right, to be able to Google it, to be able to search, and to be able to do all of this research that in 1995 you could kind of do, and in 1985 you could never do, means that users are inevitably getting smarter faster before they ever make contact with a potential product. And the convergence is that I can say that I want to be able to understand how the product works after I figured it solves my problem. But I also want to make sure I can use it to get the most out of it, and to solve that problem. And I'm looking to have those answers in front of me. And some people put walls beside them, and then they think it's going to be proprietary and whatnot. But I think that convergence really is that customers, buyers, users, whatever term you want to use for it, all are wanting that information so they can make a good decision and then feel good about that decision once it's over. So, I think it all sort of drives out what we're talking about here.
Right. And that's exactly what there are a couple, there's a white paper that Adobe put out about technical communications converging with marketing communications. And what they're saying is that the whole user experience now is this convergence. So it starts, just like you said, with a buyer thinking about a product, Googling, fiddling around, finding out, comparing, all the way to having bought the product and then needing to fix the product. Or figure out how to use the product. So that whole user experience journey is what is causing this content convergence.
It would seem that way. Yep, that and the ability to go find it.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so question here. We'll get Karen involved here. Sin in the dark. What impacts? content convergence have on content creators in the various disciplines like tech writers and marketers and everything? What are the impacts that this convergence having on them?
Well, I think I can speak directly to technical writers and marketing. There have been times in my career when I've been asked to become part of the marketing team, and honestly, I've successfully fought that because I think that marketing and technical communication have very different goals. So I'm going to be the voice of the skeptic in this discussion, I think. But the different goals specifically that Marcom and technical writing have are selling versus informing. Obviously, marketing communicators are there to sell, and technical writers are there to inform. And I also see it as an advocate position. So marketing, as I understand it, is really the company advocate because they're there to sell the product, right? But the technical writer is the user advocate. They're there to make sure the user is getting all the information they need as objectively as possible. Therefore, however, though, I think that there are a lot of skills that technical writers can bring to the marketing sphere if their teams can work together. For example, marketing prose is often vague and wordy, but technical writers, because of the nature of the work, must be specific and concise in their writing. These traits help marketing communication, however, because studies have shown that customers respond better to sales efforts when the message is clear and direct. So I was reading a book a few months ago called Selling Ideas in a World of Skeptics by Michael Maslensky. And he talks about this and about shifting the marketing message so that you engage the user in a direct manner and therefore earn their trust more quickly. So if the trend toward content convergent leads to marketing teams merging with technical communication teams, I'm not totally confident, though, that the unique gifts of the technical writer will be fully embraced. So once again, I remain the skeptic. I'm kind of old school in that I like to keep my purpose clear in my mind, but as these trends continue, I'm anxious to see how these mergings really play out.
Ooh,
And a lot
point.
of that can
Go for it.
Yeah,
Sorry.
very good point. In my experience, a lot of that really depends on the organizational culture and how it's structured. For instance, I partner closely with marketing folks, with product management folks, because I'm developing content that frontline sales associates use to support their clients. And so for me, the convergence is kind of a natural thing because the company is incredibly focused on all of the facets around the customer experience. The customer experience drives everything that we do. So one of the points that got made not too long ago is that the associate experience has to be good as well so that they can provide that experience to the customer. And I find that to be true. I find that so there are a lot of people, one of the people on my team, as a matter of fact, she was very good at creating very clear procedures. And I said, you're an excellent technical writer. And she says, I'm not a technical writer. And I'm like, but you're handling technical content and you're writing procedures and you've got that mindset that works there. But she's a voice of the customer specialist. So I see this kind of convergence happening every day. And yes, sometimes there are difficulties, but like I mentioned at the beginning, I see a lot of that as the difficulties that come from process, because their team includes people who are more specialized on one side than another, but can do the cross work. And we're finding that it works really well to keep all of our teammates engaged to provide backup when we need it and that sort of thing. But, you know, I totally understand not wanting to lose those unique attributes of the technical communicator. But I also see that in a good, strong collaborative work environment, everybody plays the role of all of those at some point or another, so that you're broadening your skill set, but you're also addressing the ultimate goal, which is to provide a good customer experience.
Yeah, Connie, that's an excellent point. And I think that the keywords you used were corporate culture, because there needs to be a respect for management, an equal respect for both Marcom and TechCom in the company. And if it's not balanced, then when those teams start working together, I think the customer needs will get compromised because one team will override the other. But it sounds like in your company, the culture is perfectly balanced and everyone has the same goal, which is to ultimately help the customer.
I wouldn't say perfectly balanced, but they do a pretty good job.
I'm sorry, Alan, are you talking to me?
Yeah, no, I just your thoughts here on the impacts and marketing.
Okay, got it. Yeah, thank you, Karen. I really appreciate that that point of view, and I really agree. And in fact, I don't think that content convergence is bad news for TechCom. I think it's good news because what we're finding is that customers are actually accessing content that used to be just end user content. So when somebody is Googling to see what's the best tractor, they're actually looking at end user documentation rather than just marketing documentation. Right. So what marketing is finding is that, well, we have to see technical documents as part of marketing. So that ups the value of technical documentation and ups the value of technical communicators as well.
Yeah, I see that too.
Yeah.
I see your point there.
All right, Connie, you ready to? There you go. Sorry.
Yeah, let's see. So, you know, I mentioned it briefly in my response to the last question, but I want to dig a little bit deeper into if you all have identified specific business or cultural factors that are driving convergence now that didn't exist maybe 5 or 10 years ago. Are there specific technology breakthroughs or cultural changes or whatever, you know, that might be, because it does feel like it's happening. You know, a lot of us were you know, singing in the wilderness 5 years ago, and now everybody's talking about it. And I'm just trying to see, you know, if you all have an idea or a sense around what's really driving this accelerating idea of content convergence. I'm going to start with Erica.
Yeah, thanks, Connie. I think Al touched on this earlier when he said that, you know, 10, 20 years ago, we couldn't, as users and Googlers now, we weren't Googlers. We were just people who bought a product. But now, because of technology, we can go online and we can ask a question. What's the best tractor? And we can look to find technical documentation that wouldn't have been accessible to us unless we purchased a product. And so technology is driving this. Also, my husband is fond of saying, follow the money. This is an economics situation. Organizations don't have the resources oftentimes to just be sending out user documentation everywhere. But because of the internet, that's really what they're doing. But it doesn't have the same costs associated with it. So it's costs, and it's technology, and it's buyer behavior.
I agree with that. I think there's the convergence really is being driven from a couple areas. In one is that you're starting to see executives and managers that have grown up with at least a taste for the internet, where even 5 years ago some of those managers really hadn't. It was something that they weren't they weren't as comfortable with it, and there is a better understanding about where, and buyers are the people who are in charge of making the decisions for, let's say, enterprise level purchases, or even just buying a new laptop or a car for that matter. They do start looking at, they start with the internet as a search, whether they're using Google or Microsoft or one of these tools. They start looking and even defining their problem and helping. And I think you're only going to see that with the advent of systems that can talk to each other. Atlassian's a good example here. I'm very familiar with it in one of my projects that I'm on, in which the Atlassian allows you to manage the software project. And once it's released, it has access to help knowledge base. That knowledge base then allows, if there is a reoccurring defect or some searches, that then allows you to file a ticket with the developers. You can then put a temporary fix into the documentation, and then this information can be shared publicly over time. So not only are you uniting, this is getting marketing out of the way. You've already become aware of the product, right? Now you're trying to get the most out of it, but you're uniting the product enhancements, your user experience, with the process of help and support. So I think this conversion is happening as much at the downstream parts of the work, in which somebody who's doing, I find it infuriating if I end up on a call with somebody trying to get help and they don't have access to the same information I do. I find that basically you can take a WordPress site, put the damn thing up there, allow both sides to access it. And if they haven't, then this is just bad management, right? It always goes back to the top. But yeah, you're going to see, I think, the technology and all the capabilities of systems that talk to each other, driving this out as well.
Yeah, Al, I want to pick up on something you said about how users want to use the documentation to help them get the most out of a product. And IBM did an interesting study on people's behavior when they landed on their website. What did they look for? What were they clicking on? And these were people who were not, they haven't bought the product yet, but they're thinking about it. And they found that the documentation that would help them to get the most out of a product once they had purchased it was actually part of what they were looking for before they even purchased the product. So they were looking at technical documentation that was meant for users, because they wanted to decide, am I going to purchase this product? I want to know right now how to get the most out of it. And if there isn't documentation out there to help me get the most out of it, I'm maybe not going to purchase that product. So
exactly,
the quality of the documentation and user documentation is one of the reasons that people will purchase a product.
Yep, and I think that's only going to continue. Sorry, I think I talked over some.
Karen, did you want to add to that?
No, I was just agreeing with what Erica is saying. I did a freelance project for a small software company that makes tax management software, and this was several years ago. And I noticed when the owner had accepted the final he posted the user guide on his webpage open to everybody. And I took that to mean that it was a selling point to him. It was, you know, it was a well-written user guide, which I appreciated knowing. And he thought that seeing all the features and all the functionality of the product that's described in the user guide would help him sell more product. So I think that's what the point that Erica made was really, really important there.
Okay.
Okay, so here, what should authors today do to cope with these changes and prepare for the future? Karen, what do you think?
Well, first thing I think of is maybe unusually personality traits. So the tech writers I've known, including me, tend to be very introverted people, not shy, but just not real outsized personalities. And, you know, if we're talking about a convergence of tech comm and marcom, then marketing communicators are the opposite, right? They're very outgoing, very outspoken people. And so I think that technical writers can learn from them and become more assertive themselves, more outgoing themselves, in that, you know, educating the marcom teams about the benefits of technical documentation, even as we've been talking about, as selling points. But at the same time, defending the actual help content, the content that is specifically designed to help users, from any of the sales pitch type of language that marcom likes to put in. Because as I've learned, and as a consumer, I get very aggravated when I am reading a help file and it says, "Congratulations on your purchase of XYZ product. This product is, you know, helps you, blah, 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 blah." It's like, you know, I just want the information. I've already bought it. Okay, you've sold me. You won me. So I think that that's the first thing, is technical writers can be open to the benefits of exchanging the information, but also prepared to kind of set the boundaries that they need to when they need to. And then in terms of tools, I think it's being willing to educate other content creators about the benefits of single sourcing. So if the marcom team isn't on the single sourcing page, then being willing to bring them up to speed, and also becoming very, very current on that technology as a technical writer themselves. So those are my thoughts.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Connie, thoughts?
Yeah, I think one of the main things, it hasn't really changed, but there are a couple of main things that writers, no matter which silo they tend to sit in, should always do. And that's be aware of and spend the time to educate yourself on how and why other kinds of content are being created. Because everybody needs to look at this as there are more efficient ways to do what we do. And, you know, to do that more efficiently, like Karen just mentioned about single sourcing, you know, some pieces are not going to be appropriate for all audiences in all parts of the journey, and in all circumstances. But having that common core of knowledge and familiarity, no matter which part you specialize in, is very key to making sure that you can do the production end, the engineering end of this content delivery in a way that doesn't waste a lot of internal resources or cause a lot of rework and whatnot. And I think those are the things that, no matter whether you started out as a marketing writer or a tech writer or somebody who does curriculum development or something else, you know, that you understand that there's a role that all these different kinds of content play, in the overall customer experience. So it behooves you to learn about it, try it out, make sure you understand how those other creators are doing their work, and figure out together what are the tools and the processes you need to make it better for everybody.
Makes sense. Erica?
Yeah, I think that one of my best days of my entire life was spent figuring out and creating a marketing slogan. And I'm not a marketing person, but I had the most fun that day. So the word marketing doesn't really, it doesn't hold completely negative connotations to me. I have some students who are anti-marketing, but I just remember that one day I had so much fun creating that slogan with a team of people. So I like to keep that memory in my head when I think about the other types of writing, the other mindsets of people on my team. Yeah, I just wanted to share that story.
No, that's awesome. I like to go to a happy place when I'm dealing with marketing.
You know, there are a lot of us who do everything. There are a lot of us who are sole technical writers. We are it for the organization. And so we have to wear a lot of hats. We have to be the marketer. We have to be the training coordinator. We have to be the technical documenter. So I think that in order not to hate yourself, it behooves us to find something great about each of those silos and what we can learn from each other.
It's funny because for years, the battle on the Tech World discussion list over marketing versus technical writing and the people who just, I'm not a marketer, I'm just a technical writer, has raged for as long as there's been a list. And I can remember getting into some heated discussions with people, trying to help them understand that in the final analysis, it's all marketing, because you are doing something that is helping your customer acquire, use, and get satisfaction out of the products you're trying to sell. Mm-hmm. And in that context, there really isn't any difference. To think of it, perhaps, if you don't want to call it marketing writing, then customer journey writing, if that makes you feel better. Yeah. Because our job, no matter what, no matter who our quote unquote customer is, whether it's other employees or an end customer of some sort, our job is to help them acquire, accept, utilize, and gain the maximum amount of satisfaction or productivity or whatever out of the products and services that we're trying to sell as an organization. And so I've never looked at them separately. I have my undergraduate degree is in advertising, but I started writing user manuals, 10 years into my career, and never looked back. So I have never kept the difference as strongly as a lot of people I know, because I understand that in the final analysis, if the marketing team can't sell the product, the tech writing team doesn't have anything to support. And in that sense, we're all in it together.
Yes.
I'll take a whack at this as well and touch on a couple items. One for the authors, which was the original question. I would recommend a lot of what was said here, and it boils down to flexibility. And if you are truly a good writer, a good communicator, you're going to step back and consider the questions that you're answering. Marketers are often sitting out in the promotion side and the awareness and helping create desire. And technical communication often is spending time in the how do I use it part of the world. But the reality is that all of the different the different questions have to be answered, and they're often answered in different ways. And because budgets are a little tighter these days with competition, et cetera, and so forth, you're often going to want to see one person in that role in the beginning. If you're fortunate enough to be in a massive corporation, man, good for you, and I hope the good times keep rolling for you. But the reality is take a step back and remember what the communication part was like. And it's as much being a business analyst of software, understanding where the design gaps are of a product, of whether it be, I don't know, I'm looking for something that, how to assemble a toy to doing Legos. It doesn't matter, right? There are gaps in designs that the communications fill. The reality, though, is that the real conversation here, it has to do with the managers of communications. I believe there's a better chance of being attacked by a black bear and a polar bear in the same day than having TechCom take over all of corporate communications.
Oh, yeah.
The reality is that marketing or corporate communications own this show. They have a better, they're closer to the bottom line. So that means that and frankly, marketing gets pushed around by sales each and every day and are often not listened to. Everybody gets abused by somebody else, and sales gets abused by CFO every day. And then so do the HR people, but it all works. It all works in a happy little circle. But the reality is that for managers who are, or one, pick wisely if you're a communicator, right? If you walk into the room or you're in this interview and you feel like, man, I don't think these people get it. One, assume that the bottom line is going to be affected within the next 5 years. Even if you just need the work, make sure the resume's in place. Two, if you do, as you are working with your managers, you write directions for most of the people watching this. Help manage, right? Help give the directions on why your area of writing about this is different than the marketing side of things, and vice versa. And managers will, I would imagine, the successful communication managers, mostly marketing, I believe we're going to see an additional sophistication and understanding this because they're growing up. The junior analysts today or coordinators today are going to be managers and directors tomorrow, and they grew up using the tools that we're using here. So they're going to get caught up on it, and they're going to, I would imagine, demand this unification. And keep your eyes open for them, and kind of fly with them as long as you can, and you know, assume that the market will sort out the ones who really just don't have a clue. It doesn't always. We have experience even here at Tech World working with marketers who are really large, sophisticated organizations who couldn't promote their way. They couldn't promote water in the desert, but you know you hope, and then sometimes you just get rid of them. So anyway, that's my my 2 bits on it.
All right. So we've talked a lot about processes and you know the roles and whatnot. So when we're talking people, process, and technology, so time to talk a little technology here. Erica, let's start with you on if you're dealing with having to create convergent content, what kind of tools out there can help you do that job?
Okay, Connie. There are some tools. Some people use them, some people don't. There are things that help you to structure your content, like labeling your content using XML or DITA. And then there are software products that help you to publish your content, keep track of your content in its various manifestations. So whether you're publishing to the web or to mobile, or if you're making paper brochures or other types of printouts, managing all of that can be difficult, especially if you've got a lot of content, and especially if you're changing things in your content often. So software like Madcap Flare and FrameMaker, those can be helpful. However, if you don't have to use those, especially if you are a smaller entity. The learning curve can be tremendous. So there's an interesting slide share from a talk at TCOM back in, I think it was 2014, talking about DITA and is DITA for everyone? And the answer that this presenter gave is no, it's not for everyone. You have to consider that learning curve, and you have to consider the cost. And there are ways around using those really high-powered technologies. So I don't know if that gets us started on an answer. Connie, I would like to hear from you. You were talking about how Adobe Content Manager doesn't talk to, or it doesn't work the way you would like it to. I wonder if you could talk about some products that you have experience with and some issues that you'd like to see solved.
Well, I tell you, I find it really interesting. Again, another long-running feud between the Microsoft Office products and the Adobe products, for instance. I think there's a couple of things in play. Yeah, if you'll find that tech writers for sure tend to be much more interested in how all these different products work and what they might be able to do with them. But there are things that you can do if you're a one-person shop writing for a small software company inside Word. Now, that's heresy to a lot of people in the tech writing field. But there are things that you can do. There's a common objects gallery that you can use where you can create boilerplate text and drop it into whatever document you need to drop it into. A lot of people don't know the kinds of things that are available. So I think it's really important when you're looking at what tools can I use is to understand that there's a real good chance you don't know everything the tool set that you have, your legacy tool set can do. And spend some time understanding that, whether it's FrameMaker, and if the new version will talk a little bit more to the Experience Manager, or whatever the case may be, or the fact that you can now create graphics in PowerPoint and export them and open them up in Photoshop and things like that. All of those more production-oriented tools are extremely useful if you know kind of, number one, what their stated purpose is versus some of the things that you might be able to use. And joining forums and whatnot's a good way to learn, all kinds of wonderful little shortcuts and tricks that people don't know. There are a lot of tools across a lot of different price points. You need to find what's going to work for the work that you have to do as an organization. If you're much more, consumer focused, you're probably going to need and have specific products. You're probably going to need a different set of tools configured in a way to help you manage from a single sourcing perspective, as well as the marketing perspective and whatnot, all the content that you might need, versus if you're working for some sort of a services organization and you need to spend a lot more time in the background understanding how the process works and what kind of compliance requirements there might be, and all of these sorts of things, where you need to have a much more robust content management engine for that, as well as the version control and those sorts of things. So a lot of this just comes down to, what does your organization do? Who are you trying to reach? What are your overall sales goals? And what kind of tools do you have now that you might be able to make better use out of than you might have otherwise thought? And then from there, then you can go and kind of do the fancy schmancy vendor bidding out processes and doing the vendor qualifications and the demos and all of that sort of thing, just to find something that may work for your team, if in fact you are, you know, in a large enough organization where that investment is likely to be made. Because many people in this business work for small companies that might be able to afford a couple of enterprise licenses for an Adobe product set, but they might not. They may be small enough that they need to go with you know, free versions of stuff from Atlassian, you know, and that is part of what makes this such an interesting, challenging industry. Is there are a lot of different tool sets out there to let you do what needs to be done, and you need to be much more aware of your own requirements, where those business analyst skills come into play, before choosing as tools, or before poo-pooing a set that you already have because you just don't understand the power of what you've already got.
I'd agree with that. Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, there's real complexity of your needs. The, you know, 50, are you in regulated environments? You know, you got the doc techs of the world out there. You have easy data, which is really kind of one of the main drivers for data, and being able to fully integrate. And they are certainly good solutions. Selling them, but you know, they have options where you can trial 30 days, and once you've gotten through your requirements. But Connie's right. There's absolutely different ways to use Notepad. You know, I mean, there's how can you integrate your content on subjects? You can have you know, on a particular topic and write a WordPress site, link it there. You have your marketing collateral, link it there. Right, there are different ways to do it. That's a little, if you don't have the budget or the, you know, the team to go through it. But there are a lot of options. We are running a little late on time here, so I have the best final question here. We'll start. Erica, we'll start with you on this question here. I'm going off script. This number 7 here. So, what does Nirvana look like for Convergence, and what do you think are your top 2 things that need to happen for that to occur?
Top 2 things. I think the first thing is to think, okay, we're talking Nirvana here, to have content that is reusable, and reusable in an easy, seamless way. So I can have a description of a tractor that is in my user manual, and that same description can be part of marketing content. And it's reusable in a way that doesn't take a whole lot of learning for everyone, and hours of relabeling everything and fiddling with the code. So that's Nirvana. I type something up and it comes out all labeled. It's got all its metadata in there. It reads my mind. And then it also, I'm like really good friends with the marketing folks and the sales folks and with the help desk people. I think that's the number 2 for Nirvana, is the relationship building and sharing of content, because the reusability and sharing of content will make this content convergence a happier place. Right
on. Karen, how about you? Yes, solid.
Well, I will speak to the people aspect of it. I think what Connie talked about, her business model really speaks to Nirvana for me, because everybody plays to their strengths in that model and has a healthy respect for what everyone else does. So as the resistor to the marketing and tech comm convergence thing, I just like to be able to play to my strengths. Like I'm the person who couldn't sell water to somebody in the desert now. I mean, that's just me. But
I have a marketing team that I should recommend you for. Anyway, sorry, we don't want to go there just yet.
So, and you know, I've always been frustrated because I do have a somewhat subdued personality. And when I do speak out, it's, you know, it's usually too late for me to be civil. So, I've, you know, it would be a situation where I, as the technical writer, am learning to use better people skills and learning to respect what other team content creators have to offer, but then I also get the same respect. So I think basically, Connie, I want to come work for you. That's the thing.
There you go. So, I'll take a cut here. Let Connie have the final word before we finish up. Nirvana, one, organizational design really starts integrating communications from the beginning of awareness all the way to customer support, and it's all, I would imagine, I'm sure there is other designs that seem more that would be optimal, but one organization worried about communications with the understanding that there are different needs, and Karen will slot you in there with the how and the appropriate approaches, but also making certain that the brand exists and has a good reputation. But that overall organizational design, I don't think we're too far off on some companies, but your small enterprises, it'll take a while for anyone to get past sales. The second part is software companies. There are some out there that you're seeing innovation. They spend more time trying to innovate their products and not just buy off online reviews. But I think software companies have to get better. They have to stop worrying about trying to corner one small niche, and they need to start looking at whether it be your APIs, whether it be using data and XML, but how this content does converge and where it sits in knowledge management systems and being able to provide information, not just to a marketer who needs to make sure the tractor has the same descriptions as we are in our support docs, but also the support personnel as they're answering those questions. If you've missed we just had a question that nobody but a real person can answer. But all of those things really do fall on the shoulders of these software companies, and we're seeing it with some of the companies I mentioned here, but there are plenty out there. Maybe there are companies that haven't started yet, and maybe the ones who could maybe, I don't know, find a way to worry about more than colored icons. But that's my dream. That's my nirvana. So, Connie.
It's a good question because, you know, nirvana for somebody who covers the field, which I do in my one role, is, you know, it's still all pretty mixed up because that gives us plenty to talk about and cover and watch and whatnot. But from my other role as a producer of content for a specific audience, I tend to agree with most of the point that's already been made about, you know, a healthy respect for your teammates, an environment that values the customer at the end of the day, at the beginning of the day, and every point in between, with a corporate culture that drives making that customer the center of it, because that's where the real innovation, the real process alignment, and the real satisfaction for those of us who are in this content creation game comes from, is knowing that we're all part of that process to get to happy, satisfied, repeat customers. And that means the right set of technology for the job, and a respect for all of the players in the game.
All right. Well, good stuff. Now we've solved these problems. We'll move on to the sort of larger issues now in our next one. Maybe we'll solve poverty or some of the various challenges we have. But it's good we've sorted this one out. It's always good to have a check mark here at the middle of the week. But thank you all. This has been awesome. We are sadly out of time here. For anybody who's been watching it now, or you catch it on YouTube later or our site, we hope we've answered some of your questions. We're sure more questions will arise. Send them to us. We can certainly set up another one of these. But you know, Dr. Conrad, Karen, thank you so much for taking time to talk with Connie and I. We really appreciate it. We always enjoy these. These are fun. We don't do them too often, but when we do, we really enjoy them.
Thank you, Al. Thank you, Connie, and thank you, Karen.
Yeah, thank you for having us. I appreciate being here.
Oh yeah, it's been fun. And
thanks so much.
It was, yeah. All right, Connie, myself, everyone at Tech World, thank you so much for watching. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Take care.